Hey everyone, so this is a call, and what I want to talk about in this particular video is I'm going to talk about a yoga concept. It's also pretty much all mystical, we'll call psycho-spiritual mystical traditions, have some sort of idea of a block or an obstruction. In this particular case, the word is Granthis, which is a knot. And this is an area where energy gets congested inside the body. Well, the big question is why does energy get congested in the body? Before I get into that, I want to draw your awareness to two links down below the video. The one link is for my website. In the website, there you can find information if you have an interest in sort of reclaiming your sexual energy because you maybe feel out of balance with it, or if you're interested in refining your sort of spiritual practice. So you can go ahead and reach out to me and we can set something up. Also down below the video, I have a link for a PDF called The Formula. Now this particular link, or this PDF rather, is, well, it's instructions or guidelines. If those of you who are interested in sacred sexual practices, you can go ahead and check this out. There's a lot of helpful information there. Again, completely free. So now going into this idea of how do we liberate the knots in our body? I'm going to try to keep this as basic as possible because sometimes I like to ramble on and on. So the basic explanation here is the word authenticity. Okay, so authenticity is the idea that my inner world and my outer world are congruent, or they match, right? So in the basic idea here, at least the image I like in my mind, is we shine from the inside out. Okay, so we shine from the inside out. Now, authentic expression, like I said, is simply finding a harmony between that externalized energy and the internalized energy. And whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, sometimes there's different challenges relative to this. But in reality, every human being is in essence externalizing their energy generally more than we are internalizing it. We are also, in a lot of ways, there's a basic meditation I'm going to describe really quickly. It's this idea that within each one of us is a spark or a light. And this light is the spark of creation itself, meaning it's that little piece of that little spark within you is also the same as the spark within every living thing in all aspects of creation. Now the meditation is this: imagine yourself, instead of having the earth in a geocentric model or a solar system or a solar model as being the center of everything, you can think about this spark within yourself as being the center of everything. Now, why is this a dangerous meditation? Because the ego wants to grab hold of it and says, oh, I'm the center of everything. Now, the reality is in a way we are, right? Everything really does revolve around the central spark. Again, because that spark underlies all creation as we know it. So everything truly is revolving around that. Now, for the ego to get this in their head, the problem is this, is that the ego is way out of touch, right? It's out of touch. It's a tool. The ego is all it is a tool. It's a screwdriver or hammer. And the reality is you are not the screwdriver. You are not the hammer. You are something much greater than that. Your presence itself, consciousness itself, and you are your true nature, your Sat Nam, is your presence, right? So now, to be totally present, what it requires is that, again, there's a flow of energy within and it's expressing out smoothly and freely without obstruction. Again, we shine from the inside out. So what ends up happening with the ego is just a tiny little piece of this whole overall equation. In the human design system, which is a sort of astrology-based system, the description is like this, and hopefully this elucidates what I'm talking about. So think about a limousine. Okay, so the limousine in this particular case is your body, right? So the engine, the transmission, and all the fluids and everything that's going on in that car, in order to get it to move, well, we have all the similar things within us, right? So but the idea in this particular, the idea I want you to look at here is, the question is, who's driving the car? Who's driving the car is actually, well, it's not you. It's not the ego. The ego is not driving the car, right? The ego can bark out orders and say turn left, turn right occasionally, but that's choice, right? So in this analogy, that is choice. So you make choices to go this way or that way, but you have to bark that order to something driving the car. Well, what's driving the car? That would be spirit or life force is driving the car. If you're conscious or unconscious, if you're sleeping at night, your heart is still beating, meaning spirit is continuing to drive the car. All right. So hopefully this makes sense. So the ego, in a lot of ways, needs to surrender to something, and this is how we open up these knots. There's various ways we can open up these knots, but primary of which is the use of intuition, right? So the use of intuition is the acknowledgement that the energy for life exists within the body, within the form, right? Or back to the analogy, within the car. So if that energy for life is pressurizing through us, is driving us in a particular direction, if it is not flowing, meaning ego is blocking it, hence the Granthis or the knots, then what ends up happening is that we feel anxiety, we feel out of sync, we feel depressed, we feel like we're repressing something or overly expressing something and causing chaos in the world around us. So there's a lot of different ways these can express. So let me go ahead and get into specifics here relative to the Granthis themselves. So the first Granthi, we'll call it the root knot, but the term is the Brahma Granthi. It's located around L4, so the lumbar vertebrae 4. And again, the specific locations are really not that important, because what it is you don't necessarily experience the physical location, but you experience the manifestations of energy, which is your mood, the decisions you have to make, your thoughts, etc., etc. So one of the things about this is that it will feel like, this is how it can feel, right? So when you have a knot down around your root, it can feel like a heaviness or contraction in the pelvic floor or lower spine. I like to use the word anal retentive. Anal retentive is great because it's kind of literal, right? So anal retention is that you're in your head a lot. So there's a contraction, and the reason you're in your head a lot could be because of fear. Could be that energetically speaking, you're kind of stuck in survival mode. You're obsessing about material security or sexual compulsion. For a lot of men, we get kind of hypnotized by the sort of sexual aspect, right? We're ejaculating all the time, etc. So this knot, in essence, begins to form, and we have a tightness around the anus, anal retentive, because the energy is naturally being shunted upward. Again, the basic concept I want you to keep in your mind here is energy flows to where the attention goes. Okay, so energy flows to where the attention goes. This is kind of the solution for almost everything within yourself in a lot of ways if you understand this. If I want to drive energy upward, I can meditate at the crown of my head. I can just meditate in that point, and I can start to feel energy pull in that direction. But if you're not ready for a crown opening, don't do that. Anyway, so the predominant tendency of the root being blocked is a fear, like I mentioned before, a little bit about fear of survival, right? It's over-attachment to material safety, compulsive sexuality, again, these things I mentioned before, and a difficulty of letting go of physical comfort, right? So, in other words, you sort of lack the courage to engage the world. You just kind of want to stay inside and stay in this sort of physically secure kind of environment. Now, how can we start to liberate this energy? So there's physical things you can do. So for instance, mula bandha or root lock. So you contract your anus, your perineum, your genitals, pull in your belt line. So mula bandha, the easiest way to talk about mula bandha is you lift your perineum, okay? Not easy to isolate that, but if you contract anus, genitals, the perineum will naturally lift. But mula bandha or root lock sends a signal. What is that signal? The signal it sends to the nervous system, to the sort of deeper vibe within yourself, is that it's okay to let go, right? It's okay to let go. The conscious mind, the ego, the personality has engaged. It has reached down to the deepest part of our body, of our torso, our trunk, of the various tubes and spaces within the body, reached all the way down there and contracted. This is the cure for anal retentive in a lot of ways, is to contract and then learn to relax. Along the way, though, you may experience your fears and sort of repressed emotional issues, etc. So now, something else you can do is grounding, right? So one of the root issues is that I don't feel safe on this planet. The way I got over that feeling, and again, if you watch a lot of news with wars and things of that nature, it can be very easy not to feel safe. But the reality is if you feel imbalanced, anxious about the world around you, you need to go outside and put your feet on the planet, okay? So literal grounding. Another way we can ground is would be kind of like in a material sense, meaning I'm taking care of the things that I need to take care of. I'm paying my bills, I'm providing for my kids, whatever it may be, right? Taking care of those basic things. That also helps you ground. Also doing rhythmic breathing, and again, breath work is kind of the cornerstone for almost everything, in my opinion. But rhythmic pelvic breathing, meaning inhale, relax your pelvic floor, exhale, contract it. In essence, what it does is it will pressurize the apana, or the energy along the root, upward towards the navel, where it then can mix and activate the Kundalini, or the latent energy which is rising upward, and which these knots are ultimately blocking. So when these knots start to open up, this is kind of how we might experience it. So when opened, in essence, the prana and the apana, like I said before, will mix at the navel. This then will start to activate our sort of fire in our belly. It creates a surge of energy, and also it'll create a little bit more clarity around your purpose. This is why I tell guys all the time, is guys will reach out and say, oh, well, how is it that sexual energy is connected to creativity? Or they have an interest in their creativity, so they know they need to do something with their sexuality, with their sexual energy. Well, why is this? Mainly because the sort of creativity, the ultimate creativity of our sexual energy is the ability to bring life into this world, which is in a lot of ways mirroring the act of creation itself. Okay, so again, this is part of what it is. Like I said, you start to manage your sexual energy, you start to clarify your sexual energy, you start to make choices. Now, when we make choices, in a lot of ways, it's happening from two places. One is here, which is kind of like, this is control station, we'll call it, right? So the third eye point is the control station. This is the seat of our awareness. But the seat of the power in the body lies in the belly, right? So we have to come to some sort of coherence here. So if I'm discharging my sexual energy all the time, this knot will not open up. I don't care how safe you feel, how secure you feel, and again, those are root issues. If your sexual energy is continuously distorted and drained, then that energy never really rises up to the belly, and hence you're not making authentic choices. I assure you, Spirit does not want you discharging your sexual energy constantly on a daily basis, or even multiple times per week, or whatever the psychotherapists out there tell you that it's healthy to do because it's stress relief, whatever it is. You need to bring these things into harmony to open up these knots, okay? So some other areas of the body that might come under influence with the opening of this knot is that it can augment how your hormones are functioning. That would be testosterone, for instance. Your nervous system starts to behave in a much more sort of, charged and stable way, right? So in other words, the anxiousness, the irritation that can sometimes exist, it basically becomes more steady. All right, so that is the first knot, or the Brahma Granthi. Now, the second knot is the Vishnu Granthi, which was it's approximately T8 vertebrae, right? So it's the thoracic vertebrae, the eighth one. Corresponds to the heart solar plexus knot. All right, so the heart or solar plexus knot. Experientially, this can feel like pressure. It can feel like tightness in the diaphragm or solar plexus. It's like this knot just right in the belly, right in the kind of gut area here. Many of us, this gets real uncomfortable, real tight. But why is that? There's a sense that we're holding. Holding what? Emotion. What does emotion mean in this context? Energy in motion. Why? Well, why would we hold energy in motion? Well, that's the lack of coherence between the heart and the solar plexus. Let me get into that in a moment. But basically, it will manifest as anxiety, grief, holding the breath, or shallow breathing. You also will feel kind of tightness in the chest or upper back. It's linked in some ways to, we'll say, emotional attachment, fear of vulnerability, or you're kind of a control freak. And these are all things that'll kind of mess with how the powerhouse is then translating outward. And something I also want to keep in mind before I continue is that the arms in a lot of ways are a physical manifestation of how the heart energy works. I used the word attachment before. So the idea with the arms and the hands is that it grabs, right? So we grab for those things we want in life. And so in essence, our heart energy is also sort of magnetic. It's grabbing those things we want in life. It's pulling in, it's attracting people or pushing people away as well. Okay, so, but like I said, just kind of keep that in mind. That's kind of how that works. And so we want to be grabbing towards the things or magnetizing the things towards us that are authentic. Again, idea, we shine from the inside out. We want our powerhouse to be in alignment with those things we are reaching for. All right, so let's see what else we got here. There may be fear of love also is another one. People have been hurt in relationships. This will shut that down, right? Again, this sort of our ability to bond or to merge with somebody, right? So now physical practices you can do to help kind of open this up would be like Uddiyana Bandha, which is the kind of diaphragm lock. This is when you create a vacuum inside your belly, so you exhale all that air out, and you pull in and in up towards up towards the rib cage, but really you're kind of pulling upward and backward towards your spinal cord, okay? So, but Uddiyana Bandha will help kind of lift up the energy, and it literally means to fly up. Breath work, right? So again, the diaphragm is the fan that basically mixes the energies between the heart and the solar plexus, right? And also, there's a big correlation with a control center here up in the Ajna chakra. So if the diaphragm is doing this, the mind is doing this, right? So they often correspond. If you're feeling anxious up here, you're feeling anxious down there. There's a direct relationship here. So the breath work, what you want to do is you want to slow the movement of the diaphragm. Inhaling slow, exhaling slow, doing nice, deep, coherent kind of breathing. And this is going to have a whole cascade of effects. But again, the thing that really opens up this down here, because that's what we're talking about here, is we're bringing into harmony our solar plexus, our powerhouse, so that it can then pressurize upward. I want you guys to think of everything happening in this that I'm explaining in this video as being pressure. I use the term sacred pressure. So you're building up internal pressure, more and more and more energy. So you're wasting less and less and less energy. You're choosing, this is a heart issue, you're choosing relationships, right? You're choosing the people to be around. This is one of those ways, for instance, that we can become more efficient, right? We're not wasting our time with people maybe who we shouldn't be wasting our time with, okay? So, but breath work, like I said, is key. You slow the movement of the diaphragm down. It has direct effects on the endocrine system and the nervous system. For instance, if you want to shift into parasympathetic or the rest and digest branch or the de-stressed branch of the nervous system, you lower your breaths down to somewhere between 4 and 7 per minute, and you're going to bring the pineal gland and the pituitary gland into new functioning. All right, so really important. Also, another way you can open this up is you can do certain asanas or postures or yogic postures. You can do back bends, you can do supported fish pose, etc., etc. So let's see. Experientially, as these things start to open up, you start to feel more connected to life, right? Less about holding on to. And also for those of you out there who are spiritual seekers, Another way we can kind of block this area is when we become overly obsessive about even a spiritual path. So the hardcore devotee types, right? They're abdicating their will oftentimes to that of a guru. So even if you're involved in a spiritual thing, you can get sidetracked pretty hardcore. So just keep in mind that as well. So again, if you're overly attached to anything, some religion, some spiritual practice, some way of eating, etc. Now I'm going to go into the way of eating really quickly. It's worth mentioning. The stomach, one of the ways that we sort of deplete the energy in our bodies is by eating the wrong foods, right? So what is wrong food? That's not for me to determine, but I'll go ahead and share with you really quickly my own experience with eating a sort of paleo or ketogenic diet. When I started eating a paleo or ketogenic diet, I was pretty strict for about 3 to 4 weeks. What I started to experience was a stillness in my nervous system. That stillness in my nervous system gave me access to presence, right? Which I kind of talked about before. And if you have access to presence, it means that you can see how the choices, well, you can see how spirit or your intuition is informing your choices. Okay, so that's one of the sort of positive side effects. But it's also what you're doing is you're feeding your body what it needs. In my particular case, I'm a big believer in the sort of blood type diet. So I'm a type O blood type. So basically what it means is that I'm supposed to be naturally kind of eating more sort of ketogenic or paleo style diets. I should also say 10, 15 years ago, when I was studying to be a dietitian and a naturopath, I also kind of did a lot of trial and error with diets. And oftentimes the diets would really mess up my energy, right? Vegetarianism and veganism destroyed my gut, really messed up my belly. I was gassy, bloated, and I felt weak. Eating ketogenic diet, sadly, because I know animals have to, they end up giving up their life in this process, etc. But the reality is my body functions best off of meat and vegetables. So just real basic. But again, what it did is it brought me into harmony, into alignment with all the energy that is going into the digestive process. And hence, there's more energy building, right? Cutting out alcohol. Alcohol depletes. More energy building. Stopping the discharging all the sexual energy through masturbation, etc. More energy building. Hopefully I'm not beating this point to death. Again, it's a pressurization upward where it's all hydraulics. So let's see what else we got here. All right, so as the sort of prana starts to sort of open up more freely, it can create feelings of like devotion and compassion and inner expansion. Again, for those of you who've ever felt really shut down in the heart, this like contraction of energy is really kind of miserable feeling. It just feels like you're not connected to life. So with all that said, we're going to go ahead and we'll move on to the next Granthi, the next and final Granthi, which is the Rudra Granthi. Rudra Granthi, it could be, I've seen a lot of like locational things that kind of describe it, but C4, the cervical vertebrae, number 4, some people associate it with the throat. Some people associate it with the Ajna chakra. To me, it's kind of both, right? So what we're talking about with this particular Granthi is the void. It's the passage or the void. The passage or void, the throat chakra and the Ajna chakra, these are places or spaces inside of us that we often have a very difficult time connecting to. So for instance, can you connect to the light above the roof of the mouth at the center of your head? Many of us cannot. Our energies feel like they're pulled left or right, or we feel a tightness or a tension in our throat. And these are indications of that knot is present, right? That block of energy is present. So you may also start to feel like you're not manifesting the things you want to manifest in life. The throat is the center of manifestation. And also the Ajna chakra in a lot of ways. Those things we see that we have also connected to it emotions, or we'll say, like, let's say enthusiasm. So if you perceive something you want to create and you have enthusiasm going toward it, meaning the energy in motion feels enthusiastic, then in all likelihood that's something authentic for you to do. So this is one of the ways we start to open that up. Now we speak it into being, right? So the throat is the center of manifestation. It is about speaking something into being, which is literally the next step behind inner perception. So I can visualize it, I can speak it into being, and then eventually the energies of the body coordinate, and then you reach out and you create that. All right, so does that make sense? Hopefully. Let's see what else. What is the, so what causes this block, this Granthi, this knot? It's egoic control, intellectual grasping, overthinking, all these things. When you start spinning on something mentally, basically this rumination, it takes energy. Those of you who worry a lot, I've said this before in videos I've done in the past, which is if you worry a lot or you ruminate on things, you can feel drained, kind of like you just ran 5 miles. I mean, this is truly the case for me anyway. So egoic control is a little bit like I've talked about before as well, which is this idea the ego thinks it's the center of the world. It's projecting on everyone around it, thinking that they believe what ego believes, or they're interpreting or trying to read everyone else's mind, right? So this is one of the ways in which ego tries to control its environment. It tries to determine what everyone's thinking, what everyone's doing. The reality is that that's not your concern. Let's see, there also is fear of surrendering, right? So this is something else. The Ajna chakra, our visions are often blocked. Our ability to expand is often blocked by simply a fear, right? It's a fear of like just how expansive things could potentially get, just how expansive you as a spiritual being can become. Those things you can access, other dimensional realities, et cetera, et cetera. There's all sorts of really interesting things you can access. Spiritual downloads, insights, and visions, and clairaudience, and clairvoyance, and on and on. So it's really, oftentimes there's the fear of experiencing more, right? So let's see what else we have. Fear of silence, that's another one. We get really caught up in our internal analysis to keep us from being truly still and present and silent. And again, there's oftentimes a thought that if I'm thinking a whole bunch, I'm doing something, all right? That's not the truth. You thinking a lot, analyzing a lot, doesn't necessarily mean it gets done until you can express it verbally, and then you can do it physically. All right, so how do we open this up? Throat lock. I will, Jala, oh boy, I'm going to spell it for you because I'll mispronounce it. Jalandhara. Bandha. Jalandhara Bandha. I mispronounce it. Anyway, neck lock. It's when you tuck your chin and you elongate the neck. It's pretty simple. I've been doing it for a long time, and it's really helped align my spinal cord from the rib cage on up. Right? So that's the importance of the neck lock. Also, you can do, in order to open up the throat, third eye point, etc., shoulder stands. You can do just inversions of all sorts, right? So shoulder stands and plow pose and all these different kinds of exercises. Handstands, these are all going to help sort of stimulate and open up the throat. Mantra is another one, toning or chanting like really basic bij mantras or seed sounds. We got the basics like Lam, Vam, Ram, etc., etc. So those are like basic ones you can do. Also just simple vowel sounds. Ah, O, U. Those sorts of sounds also are really helpful for opening up the throat, creating some resonance, and giving you something ultimately to feel. What do you experience when, I guess, this starts to open up? So in esoteric talk, it's the silver cord transitions into the golden cord. What does that mean? The silver cord is the bodily cord. It's the cord which, if you were to meditate on your spinal cord and you start doing all the good work, you're eating right, you're choosing how to express your energy out into the world, you're following your intuition, you're working with your sexual energy properly, etc., you start, as you meditate, you start to see more inner light. And oftentimes this inner light, it's very at the center of the spinal cord, and it will visually appear. Sometimes it's like a bluish silver color, but the silver cord is kind of generically describing the energy as you would perceive it within yourself. Now, the golden cord is kind of the third eye point to the center of the head. And then the passage, as I mentioned before, is in between. It's the void. It's this void in which we have a difficult time connecting to. But once we start to connect to that void, start to clarify that void, start to make intuitive choices, etc., then we can start to perceive the golden cord, which is third eye point to the center of the head. So that's generically one of the things that happens as this top knot, this Rudra Granthi starts to open up. Let's see what else we got here. All right, so the other thing that happens as this opened up, as I implied a little bit, is visionary states. Visions may happen, but most of all, probably is the idea of unitive consciousness, right? So in other words, there's a way to look at the world as either finite or infinite, right? So what we're talking about here is I can either perceive the world as separate, right? So we'll say dual, right? So in other words, the world is polarized, it's all dualistic, you are separate from me. However, as all these knots start to open up, we start to experience more unifying kind of consciousness, a tapping into a universal love, the recognition that my light and your light are exactly the same. So Yogi Bhajan used to say, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all, right? So that's the idea, is we're harmonizing with this idea that we can see God in all. And this is when the ego needs to take a step back, right? So we tap into presence itself, and then we can then move into unified consciousness. Let's see if there's anything else that it's worth mentioning here. So, finally, that's all I'm going to say about that particular Granthi, or that particular knot. In essence, everything is kind of pressurizing up to the crown in a lot of ways, right? So, when your crown starts to open up, you start to really kind of merge with the totality in some very interesting ways. Like I said, energy will flow beyond individuality at that point. So the experience is bliss, union, again, I mentioned earlier, white light, the dissolution of boundaries, so the ability to sort of merge with things or to have like a kind of deep kind of empathy. And also, like I said, the brainwave patterns will start to change. The sort of DMT will get excreted in the center of the brain. Anyway, on and on and on. A lot of different things can happen when the crown opens up. And like I said, some of those things are desirable, some of them are a little bit scary. But regardless, by the time your crown starts to open up, hopefully you don't prematurely blow it up with like psychedelics or something like that when you're not ready, had too much of a marijuana brownie, whatever it is. But the reality is that if you're opening up all these knots in the way which I kind of described, the process may take a while, but it's actually really peaceful. So in the end, the final thing I'll say, and this is going to sound like a rehash, have no goals, right? No goals whatsoever. Don't say I'm trying to open this knot or that knot. Just do practices. You got your bandhas, you got your root lock, your diaphragm lock, you got your neck lock. You got breathing. You've got choices to make, right? So, and informing those choices with your intuition. So choices, this or that. The intellect can only see this or that. The reality is that your intuition says, no, this, right? So if you have like a really strong gut instinct, you must honor it, right? You have a deep intuitive knowing, you must honor it, because that's how you're going to make sure that your inner reality matches your outer reality, and that you're not projecting your egoic, bullshit all over the place. All right, so and like I said, the more sort of physical things, your sexual energy, so eating right, moving right, and treating your sexual energy in a sacred manner. All these things will create this tremendous spiritual pressure within you. It will then open up the flow of the Kundalini, which is that spiritual pressure. and then you're going to have many, many interesting experiences. But like I said, do not have goals, just do the practices. With all that said, I appreciate you watching the video. Thank you.